If you've recently moved to the UK, you might not be sure what your rights are as a pregnant employee. So I'm going to share the main legal rights that you have and a few other things that I think are worth knowing, especially if you're going to be pregnant as an employee, especially of the NHS. Pregnancy can be really hard sometimes, so you do need all the help that you can get. Hi there, my name is Sissy if you're new here, and I am a medical doctor working in the UK. I'm also a mom of 2, and I have been pregnant in the NHS, and I feel like I've learned a few things along the way that I thought that might be nice to share with others. There are 4 main legal rights, and the first one is paid time off for antenatal care. So yes, you do not have to be taking annual leave to go for antenatal appointments. This is your legal right to go off and have your appointments in normal working hours. So make sure you do scheduling them then, ideally, because then you can have time off, go for your appointment, and then it's your right to do this. So this applies for antenatal care appointments, but also any other appointments that have been recommended by your midwife or your doctor. For instance, if you have physio, if you have birth classes, if you have parenting classes, anything in preparation for the birth, do be making sure you take advantage of this time that's paid off. Your partner also gets paid off time to attend 2 antenatal appointments with you. So you can also use that as well. The second legal right is maternity leave. Regardless of how long you've worked for your employee, you are entitled to take maternity leave, and that's up to 52 weeks. Whether it's paid or not, that is something else. And I have made a whole video explaining whether your maternity leave will be paid, how much, and really when you should be trying to conceive if you want to get all the maximum maternity pay. And I'll link that up here. So there is a compulsory leave you must take even if for some reason you don't intend to take maternity leave, and that is the first 2 weeks after having your child are compulsory. You cannot be coming to work in that time, but if for some reason you feel like you have to go back to work, then you can go back after the 2 weeks. The third main legal right is maternity pay or allowance. This obviously is going to depend on a lot of factors, which I explained in that video that I've linked above, and I will also link below. If you work for the NHS, there are 2 types of pay. So the first of them is called statutory maternity pay. The second one is called occupational maternity pay. It's going to be dependent on a lot of factors, some of which are: number 1, how long you've been employed by the NHS, how long you've been in continuous employment, your immigration status, and also the type of job that you're doing. So one of the things also that is additional that could be considered depending on your immigration status is called maternity allowance. The fourth main legal right is protection from unfair treatment, discrimination, or dismissal. So you cannot be discriminated against because you're pregnant, or if you are, then that is illegal. You also should not be dismissed from your job for being pregnant, and also treated unfairly for any way at all. Your employer also legally cannot change the terms and conditions of your contract while you're pregnant, as being pregnant is actually a protected characteristic. It's like age, disability, gender, all those other things. So all these main legal rights are going to come into play as soon as you're pregnant. However, your employer has to know that you're pregnant. So for them to be able, for instance, to allow you to go for antenatal appointments, you're going to have to tell them what you're going for. You can't just not say. So you must be telling them. So ideally, I'd advise to tell them as soon as possible, because then you're able to take advantage of these opportunities. But if for some reason you feel like you don't want to tell them, then you are legally obliged to tell them by a certain time, and that is 15 weeks before the baby is due, or when you're around 6 months pregnant is when you must be telling them. The next thing I want to talk about is risk assessment. So as soon as you tell your employer that you're pregnant, you should be having a risk assessment done to check out and see if there's any particular things that can be adjusted for in your workplace. So for instance, they need to consider things like heavy lifting, long work hours, prolonged standing, prolonged sitting, things that are going to be a danger to your health and safety as a pregnant person. So for me, in my own risk assessment, for instance, I was taking off the on-call rota, so that means that I didn't have to work long days, weekends, or even night shifts, because these have been associated with complications in pregnancies. Like there's a higher risk of miscarriage if you're working long hours. So you can be taken off the rota. So you do have to tell them, then they'll take you off the rota. And also, as well as that, because of the COVID pandemic, if you are pregnant, the risk assessment usually is going to be high for COVID. And so therefore, you probably do not want to be working in a patient-facing role. In my trust anyway, as soon as you're pregnant, it's possible for them to just take you off non-patient facing role and start working remotely from home. I know in some people's trust it's a bit more complicated, but the guidance from the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists says for the first months of pregnancy up to 28 weeks, they might take some considerations for you and try and make sure maybe you're not seeing COVID positive patients, things like that. But after 28 weeks, then they don't recommend that you work in a patient-facing role. Do check our websites to make sure that because things keep changing, to see if that's still a guidance. But at the time of making this video, it is. Important to note is about your pay. So your pay is protected even if you have these temporary adjustments made, and that is because they're temporary adjustments to your working conditions to protect your health and your safety. So you're still going to be paid as though you're on the quote-unquote rota, which I think is really cool. The only con maybe is that you can't do like locum shifts, because obviously, so your pay is going to be roughly the same for the rest of the pregnancy. If you are a doctor and also pregnant or planning to be pregnant, and you're wondering how you're going to cope with all these exams as a busy mom, then watch this video that I made showing how I've been able to do that and tips that I think might be helpful for you too.